Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. My name is Kosta Ikonomou, sports physiotherapist at Copeman Healthcare in downtown Vancouver. So today we're going to be talking about tendons and tendinopathy, or what they used to call tendinitis or tendinosis. As always, just need to mention that this educational video is for educational purposes only and not to be used as for clinical diagnosis or any advice given by your healthcare practitioner. Okay, so just an overview. We're gonna talk about what a tendon is, kind of what the pathophysiology of how it becomes tendinopathic, and then we're gonna talk about what rehab looks like. So let's talk about the structure of a tendon. So tendons are made up of fibers called collagen. Now there's actually 16 different types of collagen in our bodies, but the main types in tendons are type 1 and type 3, and that makes 90% of the tendon. The other 5% is water, and the other 5% is kind of neurovascular, so there's a blood supply. And that's needed to obviously bring nutrients and repair tendons, so that's very important in that sense. Okay, so what do tendons do? Tendons essentially help transmit forces. So it helps the muscle attach to the bone. So each muscle has a tendon which attaches to the bone, and that tendon helps transmit the force to help the bone move. Common kind of tendons that we hear about or that are very common. So obviously the Achilles tendon is one of our bigger ones, or the biggest in fact. And common injury, running, hopping, jumping, injuries to the Achilles tendon. More famously, a lot of athletes, David Beckham, Kobe Bryant, all kind of ruptured their Achilles, so everybody kind of knows of the Achilles tendon. Then we have our patella tendon, so that's in front of our kneecap. That can also get tendinopathic, and that's your jumper's knee, so individuals who do a lot of jumping activity. Others are obviously, there's the tendons in your glute, your hamstring tendon. We see there's a lot of speed runners. We see tendons in our shoulders, quite common in clinic as well, and not to mention our golfers and our tennis players. So golfer's elbow or tennis elbow, as you may be familiar with, all tendon-related injury, or mostly common to a tendinopathic tendon. So what kind of and just also to mention in that sense, like tendons make up around 30 to 50% of all sports-related injuries, so they are quite common in kind of the activity sense in the sporting world. So how does a tendon become tendinopathic? So we have our tendon, as we talked about, how it's just these fibrous sheets that connect the muscle to the bone and transmit forces. So within our tendon we have what we call tenocytes. And the job of the tenocytes are to kind of monitor the environment of the tendon and kind of make sure everything is okay. Now when we stress the environment out, so whether it's like we've had increased weight, so obviously there's more force going through the muscle and the tendon, there are hormonal changes. There could be changes in activity, which is very common. So say you've rapidly increased your activity or you've rapidly decreased your activity. This is all can kind of disrupt the environment of the tendon, and the tendon gets, as I like to call, grumpy. So these tenocytes get a little bit grumpy, and what they do is they signal to produce proteoglycans, which are, what they do is they kind of attract water into the tendon. So the tendon itself almost becomes a little bit waterlogged. Now, when the environment is continuing to be stressed out, more water is being kind of attracted in, and this disrupts the cellular matrix of the tendon, and we get kind of a bit of a breakdown. Now this kind of breakdown in the cellular matrix signals the brain that something is happening, and it will send pain signals. So that's where we get kind of a very reactive tendon to let us know that, hey, something's going on here. You need to either stop your activity or for example, you're doing too much too soon. So it's your way of your body telling you to slow it back down. Those who kind of ignore it and push through can kind of continue to disrupt the cellular matrix and have almost a degenerative tendon, as we say. And that becomes kind of a persistent pain, and they can become very painful. Something again, what triggers the process is you get new blood vessels growing in there, and this kind of will help repair the tendon. So this is kind of going back the other way, and I'll show a little bit of a graph here on how this kind of process or this modeling comes about. So let's just go over here. So this is the tendinopathy Cook and Purdam model in 2009. So as you see kind of in there, you have the normal tendon. And if you look in the green, we have optimal loading, there's adaptation, and strengthen. So anytime we stress the body, it adapts. But if it's done in a kind of progressive, nothing too quickly kind of a manner, it will adapt on its own. Just like as we go to the gym, we lift weights, and from started bicep curling, say like 20 pounds, and then eventually you move up to 25 and 30, your muscles are adapting and you're not really injuring yourself. So your body has the ability to adapt, as you can see that in the graph in the green there. Now, say in the yellow, you unload. So say you kind of go on that holiday for 2 weeks, don't do anything, and then you go back to running your marathon. So you're like, I'm just gonna run some marathons. Now you've unloaded, so you've stress shielded the tendon, and you kind of go back into again, what we talked about, the cellular matrix being disrupted. It becomes a bit reactive because it wants to get a little bit waterlogged to protect it, but that can almost backfire in a sense. And then you can lead down to the tendon disrepair or down the red kind of arrow. Now, the good news is if we have a reactive tendon, most individuals, okay, they feel their tendon kind of reacting, and then they start to modify their activity. And then that can restore it back to the normal tendon itself. So it all depends on how often or how, it's very much individualized on how the tendon will react. Sometimes even just modifying your activity can help. Others who have maybe had it for a bit longer have gone down into the tendon disrepair, so a little bit down the red graph. Now you need to do certain things in rehabbing it, modifying activities, strengthening it, and you can strengthen the tendon back up or the muscles appropriately to get back into the kind of the normal tendon state. So that's like a really simple, brief overview of how tendons kind of react. And not to mention sometimes what I didn't mention is you could excessively load the tendon. So again, you don't need to, you just go from, say you're a 3 times a week runner, and then the next week you go 7 times a week. Very commonly we see this, somebody just, again, does too much too soon. You get that disruption within the tendon, gets a bit grumpy, you can disrupt the cellular matrix and lead down to the reactive tendon disrepair. If you continue to persist, it can become degenerative. So it depends where you catch it. That's where your rehab is important to see how the tendon is responding. So kind of how does a tendon or a tendinopathy come about? So most individuals will complain of, well, first of all, when I take a history, I look at their activity level. So has the individual either stopped an activity, then gone back to it too soon, or have they increased their training a bit too quickly? That kind of reels me down to a path that this could potentially be a tendon problem. And then they kind of act on they're very painful before activity. Then you warm them up a little bit and you're like, oh, it's fine. Then after you stop the activity, it can be painful after the activity, or that 24-hour pattern, or the next day, oh, that's really sore. We tend to see this kind of, for example, in let's just give the Achilles tendon for an example. You're kind of running, you're starting to run, you're like, my tendon feels a bit stiff, bit heel pain there, but as you warm it up, you're okay. Then you do your 10K run. As soon as you stop, it comes back with a vengeance almost, like it's very painful to let you know that something is up here. So very common presentation of a tendon is that. Now let's not forget that there's other factors that play a role. It's just not activity. It could be age. It could be metabolic, so your increase in weight. It could be hormonal. Our thyroid hormone plays a huge role in controlling these hormone levels. It could be genetics, and we already talked about the loading environment. And so there's modifiable and non-modifiable factors that all play a role in tendinopathic tendons. And again, tendinopathy just means there's something happening within the tendon. Okay, and just how is kind of rehab, what's rehab looking like? So again, getting a proper history and kind of a good knowledge base on what your exercise program is, what you were doing in the past, what you're doing now, kind of leads us down to a good path of potentially this is tendon related. And then what we do is, and I'll show you this graph here, and this is a great graph. It kind of like breaks it down. It's by physiotherapist Adam Meekins, who really day one, what we want to do is we'll want to calm the tendon down. So again, this is initially, let's modify our activity, stop the aggravating activity, and then kind of start loading it. So we want to exercise the tendon, but a very light, gentle way. So light loads means like maybe you're doing a very light weights, maybe you're doing without any weights. You're just moving, for example, the ankle joint. If it's Achilles, you're doing high reps, low weight kind of thing. And this is kind of pain management in the first couple of days, first couple of weeks maybe. Then you slowly move into moderate loads. So again, you might be adding a little bit of weight. Increase your repetitions and modify your speeds. Now, some people, and we see this very common, is they have a tendinopathic tendon. They stop what they're doing, they're feeling great, and like, great. And we never kind of, then they go back to their activity, and then they're feeling fine for a bit, but then now the pain comes back again. So it's very important that you got to stick through the rehab and make sure, depending what your activity goal is, that we rehab through that. So just because you don't have pain at rest doesn't mean you're 100% better. We need to challenge you to back to the activity that you want to do. And this is where, potentially this can take 3-4 months down the line, as you can see in the graph, that you're doing heavy loads. So you're kind of have an increase of weight. You're doing kind of low reps, so you're kind of going to fatigue, and you're doing variable speeds. So now this is where you might be doing your hopping, your jumping, your plyometric type of activities. Now, if there's no pain with that, and you can handle that, then you'll be in a really good shape to continue your activity. Now, the good thing with tendons is that it's not like you're going to have to stop exercise, and always modifying your activity ways around it. So if it is an Achilles, maybe you might do some swimming, some biking, so you're not actually hopping on it. So you can still maintain your fitness. So it's very important to work with your therapist to find ways on how you can still maintain fitness and yet still get the tendon going. But really trust the process, because sometimes tendons can be quite grumpy and they can take a bit of time. All depends how painful they were, where they are in that kind of, are they in the reactive state, the tendon disrepair, or are they a degenerative tendon? So that's kind of the rehab is just a gradual progression of exercise throughout, and that will if you do, make sure that we're monitoring your pain levels and monitoring the activity, and we're going to adjust throughout your program. Great, so that's kind of the exercise component and the rehab of how we rehab tendons. So just a bit of a recap. Tendinopathy, or previously known as tendinitis or tendinosis. Kind of the new tendinopathy just means something's happening within the tendon, some form of pathophysiology. Its function is it attaches the muscle to the bone and helps transmit the forces so the bones can move. So they play a very important role. Now, tendons can get grumpy, as I like to say, and this can be to a variety of factors. Activity change, kind of modifiable and non-modifiable factors. But exercise-based treatments is the way to go forward from this. Now, there are the options out there if somebody fails good rehab, so I mean committed good rehab, then there's other options that you have to talk to your doctor and your therapist about going forward. But hopefully that gave you a bit of an overview of what a tendon is, a simple kind of pathophysiology of how the tendon kind of can get disrupted, and just an overview of what to expect in a tendon rehab. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to message me. Otherwise, hope everybody has a safe and physically active day, and I'll see you next time.